Yes. Can I get a thumbs up from the ICLEI colleagues? Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is fantastic to see people in the room and hopefully also online. We have strong competition from a big protest outside. Ironically speaking about a topic that we will also be touching upon now here. So energy and the importance of seizing the urban energy opportunity in times of crisis as an opportunity to really transform lives and use renewables as an opportunity to have these better lives for everybody and for all. I'm Lea Ranalda. I'm from UN Habitat, specifically working on renewable energy, energy poverty, climate change mitigation, air pollution. Do I wear another hat? Yeah. Also on cities and climate change. December 6th, the Multi-Level Action Day, we're very involved in that. So I'm going to be your moderator today, but since I'm also the moderator, I took the liberty of preparing a few slides just to get us started. Energy is one of my favorite topics. So I want to just provide a brief framing on why is it so important that we do talk about this topic here today. We have this twin challenge of energy access and renewables and wanting to pursue both at the same time. So let's first have a quick look of the energy transition. Where are we today? We've had here at COP28 these pledges on renewable energy and scaling up energy efficiency. But actually, what does that mean and where are we today? And if you look at this slide, we've heard about record installations of renewables. We've heard about massive projects. We heard that renewables are breaking one record after the other. But the grim reality, unfortunately, is that the energy transition is neither on track, nor has the share of fossil fuels in our energy system really decreased over the last decade. There was a little bit of dip during COVID, which is now not in this figure. But overall, we still consume around 80% of our energy is fossil fuel based. Why? Because yes, there's been a scale up of renewables, but there's also been a massive increase in energy demand across the board for heating, cooling, transport, for electricity. We've seen a big increase in energy demand, which has outpaced lots of these massive installations that we've seen over the last years. If we go to the next slide, this is one of my favorite pictures. It's a little bit of a cartoon, but I think it also captures quite well what this discussion is about. I mean, we are talking about, here at COP, the pledge is we need to triple energy, but actually, if you look in the fine print, it's not we need to triple renewable energy, we need to triple renewable electricity. So that's fantastic. I'm not saying that's something bad, but what people, if they speak about energy, what they really think is it is equivalent to electricity, but it's not. Energy is much more than electricity. Electricity actually accounts for only 20% of our energy demand. Most of it is heating, cooling, transport, how we move around, how we heat our homes, how we cook our food, and not the light and the TV. And I love how this graphic is putting that into context. And then as a last thing, just to kick us off, the last slide is where we stand on energy access. And what you cannot see here is, you see here, well, we've made some improvements towards achieving SDG 7. There's been fewer people who are without access to electricity. And also we've made some improvement on clean cooking. But what you cannot see here is that actually last year, we reversed some of our progress, that especially with COVID and also with the energy crisis and increasing fuel prices, there's now more people who don't have access to electricity than the year before. So we're not on a good track. So overall, yes, we are moving in the right direction, but actually last year, the trend has reversed. And with that, I will be quiet and I'll actually give the floor to my panelists. I have 4 fantastic panelists here. And actually, just to say, it's unusual because it's only one guy and 3 women. So I'm very excited about that. Thanks for maintaining the gender balance, the reverse way around. So I'll first give the floor to the mayor of Tswebelopele in South Africa. Honorable Mayor, the floor is yours, and I know you wanted to speak from here, so I will, of course, vacate this space for you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. As it's been said, my name is Kinalema Mpukunzi. I'm the mayor from Tswelopele in South Africa. We are under the umbrella of South African Local Government Association. Equally, we are the member of ITLE. We are the member of COMSA, as Tswelopele Local Municipality. Let me acknowledge my fellow panelists to this important topic that speaks to the importance issues, because these are the topics that happens where the rubber hit the road. If there is no energy or access to energy at local sphere of government, then everything is doomed. So we need to understand energy poverty or a lack of energy access as a form of deprivation in local lived experience, provides critical information for local governments to design policy, infrastructural technology, and socioeconomic interventions. As an example of one energy access challenge we face in South Africa is evident, it's a load shedding. Lack of access to reliable electricity affects all productive activities. Thus, commercial and industrial sector players who still push to continue operations, do so with increased cost, and most of them look to fossil-powered generators to power machines and appliances, and this is very costly. The short-term economic effect is that the additional cost of products or services is then pushed to the consumers. The long-term environmental impact is that this creates a major setback in reducing fossil fuel consumption, and it's associated with greenhouse gas emissions and meeting the NDCs. At the household level and in institutions, there has also been increased demand of unstable fuels like charcoal and firewood during load shedding, and many others. Is not limited to that. Accelerating access to clean cooking is crucial, given that over 990 million Africans, particularly those living in sub-Saharan Africa, currently lack access to clean cooking solutions. Collaborations between the private sector and national and subnational governments in African cities needs to be strengthened in order to increase access to the context of appropriate cleaning cooking solutions. Local governments have a great potential to facilitate energy access and alleviate energy poverty due to their ownership of data and proximity to local lived experiences, because we are the ones that are close to these communities and we are the ones that understands their needs. However, local governments also faces barriers in facilitating energy access in the financing of solutions, institutional capacity, and structure of delivery. Navigating policies landscape. Why are we saying energy access, financing of solutions, and institutional capacities? We've got different layers of municipalities in South Africa. I am from one of those small municipalities in South Africa where it is very difficult to access skill because of the issues of finances and many other issues related to that. The other issue is that local government also tend to have limited powers in influencing the urban assets and functions around energy services. A deeper understanding uncovers opportunities available for local action. Local governments can use 3 approaches to address their barriers. One is the short and long-term outcome evaluation. The second one is efficient and effective and equitable capacity allocation. Last but not least, maximizing available powers via collaboration and case making. There is an issue about collaboration on energy measurement and regulation look like both with national and government and utilities. Adequate energy measurement will help cities identify baseline status quo of the current energy situation and plan towards targets to improve energy access and poverty. Indicators are one means of assessing the status quo. Programs emanating from the national government levels, utilities, and implemented at the local level can be monitored and evaluated by analysis and analyzing the indicators. The General Covenant of Mayors has launched the Energy Access and Poverty Pillar of the Common Reporting Framework. A set of indicators, guidelines, and timelines built to help its 13,000 plus signatories take action towards a just energy transition, of which is the most important issue in South Africa. My city, Tswelopele, is a signatory to the General Covenant of Mayors Regional Arm, the Covenant of Mayors in Sub-Saharan Africa, abbreviately known as COMSA. Here at COP28, COMSA signatories are calling on the international community to support the current efforts to drive Africa's just energy transition and provide an energy future for all by supporting the knowledge transfer, resource flows, and capacity development needed for cities to drive scale sustainable energy access. Cities and mayors are best placed to spearhead how we can address the energy crisis, provide relief to our residents, and accelerate the green transition through local actions. Cities are doers and not the delayers. Mayors are committed to doing their part, but faced with unprecedented challenges, cities requires the right level of support and investment from national government to scale up action to effectively tackle the energy crisis. There are many possible levels of local governments to deploy and realizing energy access solutions via policies and regulations, stakeholders collaboration, internal capacity building and data collection, investment and securing finances, and city-led programs. When you speak about securing finances, we all know that it is very problematic for local government to access the commitments that are made at national level with the finances. A typical one is the one of the loss and damage fund that was launched last year. There is no clear view as to how local government is going to access that particular funding. The local governments need to engage with the community to identify issues faced and they can use policy mechanism to provide solutions in order to execute some of the proposed policy. Effectively, financing for energy solutions is paramount. So what we are saying in a nutshell is that the energy efficiency and poverty is a serious crisis for all of us. If we are not going to bring our heads together and work as a team, we will not be able to overcome that particular barrier. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mayor. Please do join us here because we will have some follow-up questions for you. And I love what you said on cities are doers and not delayers. That's actually such a good tagline that I want to print it on a shirt. This is really like strong, like a really strong message. So thanks so much for this and bringing also this point home that you are closest to your communities. You are closest. You know what communities need and want, and you are best placed to work on some of these challenges. And you have already made the perfect segue to my dear colleague Davide from the Global Covenant of Mayors to kick us off with some of the work that GCOM has been doing. And I understand there are some slides. Davide, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Leah. Indeed, my name is Davide Cassanmagnago. I'm from the Global Covenant of Mayors. I'm Senior Manager for Partnerships and Stakeholder Engagement. But in a previous life, I had a role that will come in very handy for this presentation, but I'll create a bit of suspense for now. We'll get into it in a few slides. Thank you for being here. This is the 10th day of COP. It's late in the afternoon. I'll try to be concise and precise with my message because we have two more interesting panelists than me coming up soon with some concrete and detailed work. Global Covenant of Mayors, largest alliance of cities worldwide. Nearly 14,000 municipalities joined the climate action, born more than a decade ago, asked for a city to submit an action plan in the first place, including mitigation and adaptation actions. Then, as the mayor kindly anticipated before me, 2022, we added a third pillar, a third request to the cities, which is not only a request, of course, but it's a way of helping them towards the climate action. This is what we call the energy access and energy poverty pillar. And here comes in handy my previous life. I've been designing it with the set of indicators that were described, mentioned by the mayor. So what it is, in a nutshell, it is a list of indicators. As Leah said, energy is not only electricity. Energy includes transport and many other aspects. That's why this set of indicators is divided in groups. So you have transport indicators, but you also have governance indicators. You have any sort of indicators that could help a city understand whether they are affected or not by energy poverty and lack of access to energy. These are some of the numbers from the Global Covenant of Mayors. As you can see, we have more than 8,000 action plans submitted by our nearly 14K cities all over the world, of which nearly 3,000 have an adaptation component, and already more than 1,000 from 2022, the launch of the third pillar, have used our indicators and have included actions that also has a component of energy access and energy poverty. In the next slide, we can see the breakdown of the actions specifically. And this is what I meant. There is 1,533 actions listed by our mayors all over the world that has at least a component of energy access and energy poverty. They can be sometimes related to included or categorized as adaptation, mainly actions. Some other times it's mitigation. And in some of the cases, they are touching upon the three aspects as a whole. Last year, Global Covenant of Mayors, next slide, please, has commissioned to Arup, that will present right after me, a research and analysis to try to strengthen the narrative around the access to energy and energy poverty pillar that we have launched. So I won't say much more on this because we have a dedicated presentation right after me that will provide an overview on the study conducted. Only thing I will leave you with before passing the floor is next slide that recaps a little bit the what we intended the definition of energy poverty and access to energy. So secure, sustainable, and affordable energy for all. This is the guide that we give to our cities to highlight the action that they want to use in regard to the pillar. So I think with this left, I can quickly pass the floor to the colleague from Arup that will dig a bit more and provide an overview on the research that I've conducted. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Davide, for walking us through this. Indeed, Kelly, the floor is yours. I don't want to actually interfere too much in this, and I will take the liberty to sit in the audience because this is actually incredibly interesting. If you could move to the next slide.
Great.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Kelly.
Well, thank you very much for having me on this panel and to present today the results of this study that has been done together with the Covenant of Mayors. It's a very important piece of work because it looks at the role that local government can have in alleviating the energy poverty of the cities and the areas in which they represent. And so it was really so great to hear the speakers before me say, I think we're all saying the same thing, is that it really is at that local community level where the councils and the local governments are closest and they actually know how the city operates, how to actually make things happen, what's going to work and what isn't going to work. And to that end, we're looking at what is the role that they can play in cracking down the barriers between getting energy security, energy equity, and energy sustainability for their people. So this new report, as was mentioned, is called Unlocking Urban Energy Access and Poverty. And next slide, please. I'll take it to the next slide. And really what the research was looking at is what does it actually mean to have energy poverty? And that will be different in each locality, slightly differently, but there is some key themes in there. And what are the barriers that are faced to energy access and addressing energy poverty for the people? And therefore, where can the role of local government be? And how can they influence the solutions that are going to come out of that? And we've identified a whole heap of opportunities there that will come out within that report. And what are the levers that are appropriate and effective that can be looked at by each local government area to apply to their area? Bit down there. Thank you. Sorry, I'm a bit taller, sorry. Next slide, please. So this slide, I think, was a good one to pull out of the report to show you, in that when we did a whole survey of local governments and as part of this study. So we did a global research, and then we actually did some individual stakeholder surveys for each of across the local governments. And then we also did a case study deep diving into some of the issues in South Africa. And when the local governments were asked to comment on whether they had powers in relation to energy security for their local areas, clearly the results are showing they didn't feel they had much power at all. And when you look at it that way, with the people who are closest, the governance model that's closest to the people, not having, not seeing that they have power to influence over that, we're using this report and this investigation to see where they can find that power and they can really move the conversation forward. Next step, please. So this gives you an idea of why the local governments don't feel that they have the power, because there is many stakeholders and complex governance arrangements. And if we think about the things that the Mayor had spoken about earlier, about all the things that are affecting the communities, it might be energy efficiency in the housing. It might be not actually having access to electricity. It might be having to use not having electricity to do your cooking and having the health impacts from that. It might have insecure energy. So it's on, sometimes it's off, other times you can't rely on it. And so looking at all those things and the number of stakeholders there, which are mixed between the local government, it could be industry, it could be federal government, state government. It's very hard for any one actor to actually get the outcome that's needed. It needs a lot of collaboration. Next slide, please. So really, not to take you through the whole detail of the whole report, that's there for anyone to access if you would like to read in the detail. But effectively what we're saying is there are actually things that the local governments can do. They have an opportunity by using that knowledge that they have and the access they have to all the stakeholders to actually convene conversations and drive them forward. They have policies such as, it might be to do with approving energy access in some areas, even though they don't provide the access itself. So they have a say in things like that. They also have the opportunity to really use their existing powers to identify some short and long-term outcomes that they would like for the community. So do their own plans effectively, and then see how those other stakeholders would play a role in that. It's also about them understanding their communities and where the access to energy is making a difference in those communities. What if there isn't that access? What does it mean? Is it changing the economy and the abilities for jobs in those areas? Is it changing the schooling and education outcomes? And by identifying them and identifying all the actors involved, you can start to draw them into the conversation and try to bring them together. There's also really something that you see that local governments can do more than others, is that when they're representing their constituents and they can get the voices of the people, that's where they can really make a difference, where state and the national governments are much further away from that. And that's where we found the power of storytelling really so important in the work that was done. Next slide, please. So what I might just pause here and talk about some of the storytelling that we heard and what we did as part of the assessment. And it was really talking to people about how it affected their everyday lives. And I thought it would be worthwhile for me as someone, you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from Australia, and I've done some work in Indigenous communities, with Indigenous communities in Australia. And we have worked on a program that was funded by the state government to look at what were ways that we could close the gap and sustainable development in some of those Indigenous communities, which are quite impoverished relative to other mainland parts of Australia. So these are islands off the coast in the Great Barrier Reef, where they're Indigenous communities that really are living below the poverty line in Australia. And some of these communities actually have access to power that is provided, and it's generally by a diesel generator, but they cannot rely on that power to be there when they need it. They usually live in houses that are very poorly insulated and do not have very easy to cool. It's the cooling that's the issue that we have got. And so if they want to have cooler environments, they need to use air conditioners, and they're usually not very energy efficient and become quite unaffordable. And so what we saw is a series of steps that had been taken where people had tried to help over the time. And these included they were getting enormous energy bills that they couldn't afford to pay. And then so one idea was to bring in an energy card, which I'm sure those of you around the world might have heard of these things that have happened. And so when payday would come, they would put some money on the energy card, and then that would run out after a week or so. And then the rest of the month they're without energy again. And so we worked with the community to come up with ideas about what they think could work. And they really actually wanted their local government, which was an Indigenous local government, to step in and help, because they didn't feel like they could work with the housing department who owned their housing, or the state government utility who owned their electricity, or the people who came in actually maintained the solar panels on their roofs that they didn't get access to. And so we talked about facilitating an opportunity where they would get access to that power themselves, and how they could convene that conversation. And so then to help alleviate their own energy problems for themselves. And that is an ongoing conversation. I can't say it's all solved at this point. But to that end, these findings that came out of this report are really, oh, sorry, could you change the slide, please? They came up with those three things, which are really identifying these, doing up plans that can show where people can have those roles and identifying it, then looking at what the benefits and opportunities come from identifying that. So it's just broader than just talking about energy, and then looking at making the case and putting that forward. And so how the system works in Australia in that example is you're looking for grant funding to start with to get some programs off the ground, but then you need that ongoing support, not just in a short period of time. And it's that length of time, which is usually longer than what the local government has to look to. That's the difficult part. So next slide, please. And so then we come to, with the report, the conclusions. So really what we found is that based on the lived experience, what people at this point in time, for that communities that we were talking to, we're finding real impacts that people are having, and it's very complicated to solve the situation. Local governments do have a key role to play in solutions for energy access and poverty for their citizens. Their strengths lie in being close to their communities and understanding the systemic nature and issues to support the development of the solutions that are needed and to meet the needs of the local context. That's so important. And a key next step is regionally or thematically focused research, really to further understand those economies and get that context for those regional areas to take it forward for the next. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I will take the liberty to actually invite all of you up here because we have a last panelist. I don't know if you want to speak from the panel. Yeah, sure. We're all friends here. Last but not least is the youth perspective. And so I'm really excited to have Shakti, to have you from Student Energy here with us to give us a little bit of some intel. What is it, what are you seeing from the Student Energy perspective? What are you seeing from the youth perspective? And also, what are some tools and resources that are available to measure energy impact? I will no, you know what? I'll keep my microphone and give you this one. Oh, actually, let's do it this way.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Shakti Ramkumar. I'm the Senior Director of Policy and Communications at Student Energy. We're a youth-led organization. We work with about 50,000 young people in 120 countries. And our main goal is to empower young people to take action on energy through energy education, skill building, capacity building, as well as mentorship and funding for youth to lead community energy projects in their communities. So I think what we're seeing from the youth-led perspective is young people are already taking action on energy in so many different ways, especially at the city level, which is why I'm really excited to have this conversation, because I think, yeah, there's such great synergy between the work that youth do in their communities and what is possible to be supported at the city level. What we're seeing in specifically the energy space, is young people, one, are very interested in careers in the clean energy space, but are finding it difficult to access these careers because they're not really taught about this in university. I know I certainly wasn't, about the many different pathways that are available to work on energy. And so young people are kind of having to navigate their own way through a very confusing and sometimes not very inclusive industry. And so many young people, because of this, are taking matters into their own hands and are becoming entrepreneurs and are starting their own nonprofits or social enterprises, their own companies related to energy in their communities. And we, in our network of 50,000 young people, we're seeing that pretty much everywhere in the world, there are young people who have an idea to do a clean energy project or an energy access project in their communities, and they're able to galvanize a lot of young youth support for their projects. We've had youth in our network who have started off as a one-person project and now have a team of hundreds of volunteers and staff. And we see that they're able to really generate a lot of excitement around clean energy. And however, over the past 10 years that we've been a nonprofit, we still see that young people continuously struggle to obtain any kind of funding for their work, sustained funding for their work. It remains a major challenge for youth. These days, we hear a lot more rhetoric about young leaders and youth in spaces like COP and in high-level spaces, which is really exciting to see. But we're not really seeing that yet translate into actual resources for youth-led work and youth-led initiatives. The funding that youth are sometimes able to access is often geared towards one-off projects or something new. Funders like to fund something new, something not flashy, and not so much sustained funding for organizations or startups or unrestricted funding for young people to be able to invest in things like employment and staff and stipends. Youth are often expected to work for the cause, which they do, but they also would like to earn a living. So those are some of the things that we're noticing in our work. And this all was kind of consolidated into a report called the Youth Impact Framework that was released just earlier in 2023. And we had great support from the Global Covenant of Mayors and the University of Melbourne in advising on this report. And it's essentially a small set of indicators, 15 indicators and impacts that young people can use to better communicate the impact of their work so that they can be a little bit more strategic in accessing support and funding for their initiatives. And it's also acts as kind of a shared language with policymakers and other city level governments, other stakeholders who can use the same framework to understand the impact that young people are having in their cities, so that maybe when they're making their strategies or funding plans, they can actively include youth.
Thank you so much. Can we get a round of applause? And maybe just to say, I was part of the first day, the hackathon of the Student Energy Summit, and we spoke a lot about why is also data so important? Why is frameworks like this so important? Is because young people in the end with this kind of data can also signal to policymakers, well, this is what we are interested in. And if you want to have us as the customers of the future also, by the way, and as the voters of the future and of the present, these are topics that you need to take into consideration. So thanks so much for sharing that. And also, of course, there's link to job opportunities. And with that, I do want to just ask a question to everybody here. I think, Kelly, you mentioned briefly on storytelling and the importance of what are some positive stories that we can spin on this topic of renewable energy, the importance of addressing energy poverty. And I know that you have your answer maybe prepared on the importance of storytelling, but I want to ask the same question to everybody here. Can you give us some concrete examples of how you in your work are using also the power of storytelling to convey the importance of renewables? I'll start with you, the very left.
Okay, so the power of storytelling. I think what that research showed that was done there is that when you actually scratch the surface, you might start off with saying, I don't have access to electricity, and then the cascading impact that has, or the understanding of I want to solve this problem, and then realizing how many people are involved. So until you can actually hear that from the individual people in that location and what they're having, what the impact it is having on them, you can't work out how to resolve that problem, because it's very complicated. It's a spider web, really. And so I'd say that's where just that link to the local governments and the cities who are closest to their people, if they're not hearing that, certainly the state and the national government are not. So that's the power of it.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to?
Thanks for the question. I think what is critical and important is the engagement with the communities, because in anything that we are doing, we have to take their views along. We've got the program that is called Integrated Development Planning, and in so doing, we source the views of everybody. But in terms of the storytelling, we've got a program in Tswelopele that is called 100,000 Trees, 1,000 Stories. And we focus mostly on women, and there's a reason why. If you empower a woman, you are empowering a nation. If the woman does not have access to energy, it means most of the families will be disgruntled. So that's the way that we are doing things, but we use any other forms, your local radios, your ward committee meetings, your ward meetings. That's where we go and engage with these people to understand. Remember, Tswelopele is not like your big cities. It's one of the smallest municipalities that is rurally, economically and otherwise. So we have to engage everybody and make sure that they do understand that if we don't have access to energy, it does not mean that it's only electricity. Energy speaks to many things, because the farmers themselves, they won't be able to transport their crops, and there will be challenges. So those are the things that we engage with them on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love this because it's really, I think, in the energy community, we often, we talk about, yes, this big wind power project and this massive solar PV plant, and we're not talking about why. What is the purpose of this? What's the service that renewables can provide to people and to communities, and how that can change life? And by the way, the fossil fuel industry is fantastic in telling stories, because they will not tell you we are burning dirty coal. They will tell you we are creating families. We are creating a warm home for you. We are creating, comfort. That's the story that they tell you. So this importance of, we need to be able, as people working on energy, to tell similar stories about the importance of renewables and what they can bring to communities, to cities, to people, to youth, is so important. Davide, would you like to also add
sure.
something on storytelling?
Sure, I would like to take the storytelling to a bit higher level and use the power of our local leaders as a global covenant of mayors, and just link to the example of energy access and energy poverty. If you look back at the number I showed you, like more than 1,000 cities after 1 year from the launch of the energy poverty pillar have submitted actions. This is an example of how, once again, cities are the doers, the ones that are in the front line. They go at a pace that it's incomparable to the ones of our government in the negotiation and in discussion. This COP is, of course, and we all know it, hopefully a big game changer in that direction. So I wanted to bring back the power and the storytelling of local leaders that, once again, on this topic, are showing that they are the front runners, mayors, governors. And this, I believe, it's the story that we should bring forward constantly and keep on insisting on this to make sure that it gets somehow. And I don't want to steal your thunder here. I know you have a closing remarks. So I just want to give an assist to you and try to include all this political will and power that we are aggregating nowadays into the process somehow, because the stories that matters are mostly the ones from our local leaders that are on the front line to the fight of climate change.
Thank you. I'll pass it to my left.
Yeah, I think stories are of particular importance to young people too, especially in the early stages of their action in the energy space. It's sometimes all that youth have is our stories and what we know about our communities and what we believe and how we want to see a systems shift where we live and how we are taking action. Many young people that we work with, they start with their stories, they start with a theory of change, and then they take action because they don't necessarily have like an organization or established financials or, all these other forms of capital that others may have. You typically don't have it in the beginning. So the stories are of very much a high importance to young people. Another reason I would say their storytelling is particularly crucial for youth is just the people power aspect of youth-led projects. Many youth-led projects involve hundreds, sometimes thousands of youth volunteers, and stories spread much faster than any statistics or anything else that young people can put out there. I've noticed this in my own days of organizing, as well as supporting other young people to do their own projects and to consolidate a lot of energy around their work. Is the storytelling is very crucial. It's actually one of the skills that Student Energy trains young people to do, is to do storytelling, because it's often hard to kind of think about your own story and then say it in a confident and powerful way. So we think, as much as we teach energy system fundamentals and energy education, we think it's equally important to teach storytelling skills and help young people kind of arrange their own thoughts, their own perspectives. Often we have youth saying, oh, I didn't actually think that was like an important experience, or I didn't think that was notable about me. But now I see now how it contributed to the work I'm doing now. So we did it here in our Student Energy Summit. We do it at all of the events we bring young people to. These kinds of spaces can be very intimidating. So before we bring youth to them, we work with young people to teach them how to tell your own story, no matter what room you're in, no matter who you're speaking to. And we see that that helps them scale their initiatives and meet a lot more interesting people that way. So yeah, those are a few of the reasons it's very important for youth too.
Please.
One
Yeah,
more
our
just
friend.
final remark. So I think that's the power of the research and the report that was provided with the mayors is really about pulling together all those stories and linking up what are the themes within there and what are the commonalities, so that you can roll up those interventions and feed them up to the mayors, and then the mayors can roll that up together and then feed it up the chain, so that you're getting that power of the collective storytelling, sending the messages of the detail that isn't available anywhere else. It's data.
I love that. And I think especially it shows the importance of, if local leaders can tell stories of how their actions in their cities have changed the lives of the people living in their cities, how it has addressed the energy access and the energy poverty question, I think we can also make that case. And I mean, I love data, but we need to have that good data complemented with a good story of saying, this is the data, and this is what this data means in action, in real life, on the ground. With that, I do want to open the floor. If there's any questions to anybody here, or if somebody wants to share a story, please. Oh, you have one. Sorry. Much better.
Hello. It was an honor to listen to all of you. It's really admirable what you do and what you are dedicating your time to. I have a specific question for. I am terrible.
Yourself.
Oh, sorry. My name is Camilo Cuba. I come from Bolivia. I work for a local government, which is Cobija. It's located in the border between Bolivia and Brazil, in the Bolivian Amazon. So my question, I'm terrible with names. It's to Australian panelists.
Ali is my name.
Okay. What would be your reflections? Because it really called my attention, the story you mentioned about the national plan to work with indigenous people. Because in Bolivia we have the same. I mean, we have a really similar program that are benefiting indigenous, not specifically to open to indigenous, but it is open to vulnerable groups, which happens to be indigenous as well in Bolivia, which is a housing program. But the issue with that, and of course it translates to energy issue and energy access to energy issue, is that houses are designed in the Andean, in the mountains, to be constructed or built in the Amazon. So for me, it's a matter of conceptualization of what we want as development, because if we build the same thing for everyone, it's not going to be feasible. We're not going to respect the rights. And of course, it's the houses there are, you can live within them because it's too hot for them. And of course, they don't have access to energy. They don't have access to AZ. So that's an issue. I would just say that, or what are your reflections from your experience with the national government? I don't know if you have dealt with them. Is it effective to question the conceptualization of development with with a national government program? Is it feasible to sit with them and talk to them about what we understand of development or sustainable development? Or do we have to go to the action per se and not discuss the conceptualization? I don't know if I make myself clear.
I understand. And I think that it's exactly the same situation. And I think if you were to survey people in the audience and their knowledge, the inappropriate housing that is in locations which makes the heating and cooling needs increase and the energy needs increase and the energy efficiency less are some of the biggest problems that we have. And that's what I have to give it a plug. The tripling up of renewables also, you know, that you've heard around COP that many countries have signed up to. It's also around doubling down on the efficiency, and that comes with insulation and all things like that. But to your point about communities that are being provided with housing that is inappropriate, that was absolutely one of the things we found in some of the work that we did, is that you're asked to look at a question about energy, and next thing you're talking about housing. And very different departments, thinking very differently for all different reasons, why they're constructed that way, you know, when are they next going to be replaced? For us, it was was the structure capable of putting a solar panel on if that was what the result was going to be? Indeed, how long were those houses going to be there and what would a retrofit look like? And then you're talking about a whole different set of circumstances, and the local government isn't responsible for that oftentimes as well. And so that's where I think it comes down to having the local government armed with the information that they can advocate to do that. And I think it's really powerful to hear about a covenant of mayors that can start increasing these issues when you see the commonality that comes in, and that's the power, because individually it's very difficult to do, I think. So I hope that helps. It's a really big question.
Anybody else want to add anything to that question? If not, are there any other questions in the room? No? Then I'd like to give all of you the opportunity to just, for some final thoughts, to share anything that you have not said yet. Can be on this topic, can be something completely different. I mean, on energy and energy poverty preferably, but you know, just to share some final remarks as well. I'll start on my very right.
Yes, then I will do a little marketing exercise for the GCOM. If you're a mayor or you're working with municipalities and intend to look at this topic as well, please go check the GCOM website or engage with me right after the event. And it's free. All the tools and the guidelines developed by GCOM. Joining the alliance it's also a voluntary action and free of charge. Then you could have access to, as I said, this list of indicators for energy poverty that will help you assessing and setting your own target based on the self-assessment you will do with your indicators, and then join the largest global family of municipalities committing to climate change. Thank you.
Honorable Mayor.
Thank you. My last part in short, the first one will be that we as subnational government, we want to be part of the negotiations. And this is my reason. The reason is that everything else that is happening, and on those negotiations, the implementation part of it happens at the local government level. And if we are not involved, then the decisions that are taken, they got a bearing on us as a sphere of government that is closest to the people. The other issue that I want to raise is that we must not commit a mistake of devolving energy access and poverty from climate change, because they go hand in hand. You cannot devolve them. They are just twins. So anything else that we do, we must know that local government is here to stay, and there is nothing that is going to happen if local government is not taken abroad. And we need also access to funding. We must not commit a mistake of mixing all these fundings and bring them as loans to local government or even to nationals. They must come as grant, because we are faced with many challenges because of the climate change disasters.
Thank you so much. Let me move on to my left. And, you know, I appreciate you saying, you know, the access to finance, because that's a topic we haven't really touched upon. So I appreciate you to bring that in the last minutes of this event. Sorry.
Oh.
You know what? Let's swap.
Thank you. I mean, first I'll plug a couple of our reports, the Youth Impact Framework report that we released earlier this year, as well as the Global Youth Energy Outlook. I would really recommend checking out these reports because they contain the perspectives of thousands of young people from around the world, and they really outline how young people want to take action on energy, the work that they're already doing, the barriers that they're facing. And I think we really prepared it with stakeholders in mind who, care about including young people and want to just develop more ways to work with young people. And the other thing I wanted to add is just the importance of considering young people as important stakeholders in policy making and in policy implementation. Youth are often these days the ones that are getting out the vote, that are highly supportive of climate policies. I know in my hometown of Vancouver in Canada, it was young people as young as 12, 13, 14 who pushed for Vancouver to declare a climate emergency. And then that resulted in an actual implementation plan that now other cities are learning from and are using to declare their own climate emergencies. And young people were instrumental in getting that passed and then staying with it to ensure that there was an implementation plan. So that was the other thing I just wanted to conclude on, is that youth can be very powerful allies and mobilizers in keeping city level climate action plans on track, or escalating them if we need more ambition. And they would love to be included in the process of developing those policies.
Thank you.
All right, I think I'll conclude with this COP. It's been great to see that real emphasis on local action and local government as well. And I think that's the youth can come through really strongly in that frame, I think, very much. And to the funding point, I think it's so important that we have that continual funding for longer term. We need to identify that, and that's where having that information to go, this is what we need to do in the longer term to rally for that, because that's not happening at the moment. You might be able to get a fund for whatever the flavor of the month is that the government will want to give out for at senior government. So we need that continuous funding for people that are advocating at the local level.
Thank you so much. And with that, since I'm the moderator, I can go a little bit rogue and ask Joe to put the slides back up. Davide is getting nervous. Because it's been mentioned here quite a bit of times. There have been all these pledges happening here at COP28, massive momentum for local governments. We had the Local Climate Action Summit as the first time ever on the 1st and 2nd of December. There was the CHAMP pledge that was being launched and has been signed by over 65 governments. And at the same time, we had a renewable energy and energy efficiency pledge that had one of the highest numbers of national governments endorsing it. And actually, for me, these two pledges go hand in hand. And as I prepared for this session, what I will do is I want to find out about that sweet spot in the middle. Which ones are the national governments that have said, we want to have more, we want to triple renewable energy and double on energy efficiency, and we commit to working more with our local governments? Because this could be the sweet spot where we say, if you want to triple and double, and if you want to work with your local governments, that's a match made in heaven. So that's one big aspect that I'm super curious to see what's going to come out of that as an opportunity out of this COP. And then also to say, for me, we at UN Habitat, with the support of GCOM, are working also on a report on energy poverty and the link to just transition in the urbanizing world. And for me, this could be this kind of data and this kind of research can directly feed into this report as well. And as a very last slide, we had the ministerial meeting on urbanization and climate change, and we discussed lots of these things here: access to finance, how can we build more in cities, how can we ensure that cities are part of that conversation, and how we can trickle that conversation down. And so together with the Local Climate Action Summit and the ministerial meeting on urbanization and climate change, we came up with a joint outcome statement on urbanization and climate change. And if you're interested in reading it, this is the QR code. It's not very long, 1.5 pages. Don't be scared. And really highlighting 10 outcomes that have been discussed at both the Local Climate Action Summit and the ministerial meeting. and pushing and providing opportunities to take us forward. With that, let me thank my panelists. Let me thank also GCOM, Davide and Ben for putting together this event here together for us. And if I could get a round of applause for these fantastic panelists. And I would love to take a picture with the SDG cubes. Our favorite SDG isn't here, but I think we can do without.